Well, thank you very much for inviting me to address the board. And I know we want to have a long conversation, and you've asked me to kick off with a couple of observations and thoughts that I have as to what are the most salient issues that the board and the C-suite should be focusing on in 2022 and beyond. And I want to sort of spend my time talking about two issues which I think are extraordinarily salient that I think boards are not giving enough attention to. The first is sustainability. Now, sustainability, means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. It's become mainstreamed. It's become popularized. But for someone like me who began his career as a PhD economist working in the natural resources industries in the early 1980s, sustainability really is at the core of how markets are operating and how corporations are operating or should be operating. So one of my first publications after I began to work on these issues was measuring the social cost of oil. What are the externalities? What are the social impacts? What are the environmental impacts of consuming or producing a barrel of oil? And how much does the price that we pay for that barrel of oil actually relate to the actual costs, not just the commercial costs, but these other costs, the environmental and social costs. Well, flash forward now, 20, 25, 30 years, everyone is talking about sustainability. The problem is, I think, in most corporations, sustainability still is thought of as an aspiration. And it really should be thought of as the core of the operational framework and the operational function of the corporation. And what it means is how to maximize the long run value of the corporation, the shares, the stakeholders, the entire ecosystem that is allowing the corporation to thrive, and in cases where it's not, what kind of corrections need to be made. So I think, when you think about what is the role of the C-suite and the boards in terms of sustainability, the overarching problem in the United States is a lot of short-termism, and that is driven by the SEC regulations to report quarterly results, at least for publicly owned firms. That short-termism really undercuts, attaining the objective of long-run profit maximization and value of the firm. And so I think one of the tasks for corporations, apart from trying to change the regulations, is to focus on the long run. And in that regard, the chief sustainability officer, which has become a very popular position to be filled in modern corporations, unfortunately, many of the CSOs that are being hired are not well steeped in the operational issues of how a corporation, should be functioning. And equally importantly, the CEO and the other senior members of the C-suite really do need an integrator in chief. And that is what I think is the core function of the chief sustainability officer. He or she should be working hand in hand with the CEO, and not just, on a domestic basis, but on a global basis, and not just on a particular product or service, but a global integrator, both geographically and across all products and services. So I think, we have a lot of progress still to be made in terms of what the functions of chief sustainability officers should be. And when we get to boards, increasingly boards are creating sustainability committees. I think that's great. And I'm not one who fancies creating lots of committees at boards. But again, the sustainability committee at the board also needs to have the remit to look at across all of the issues that boards look at, whether it's financial, whether it's risk, whether it's environmental, whether it's labor unions, and I think have that role in having a conversation among the board of directors about how well is the company that we are overseeing actually operating in a sustainable framework. So I think that is a very important issue for this year and for the years to come. The other important issue I'd like to flag is cybersecurity. Cybersecurity, still to a lot of people is seen as so complex. And that's a real problem, because at the board level, when directors have conversations with the CIO, the Chief Information Officer, or the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer, to be frank, and I've seen a lot of these conversations, the conversations are really quite dumbed down. They're dumbed down by the board side because they're often intimidated to talk about what they think are extraordinarily technical details. And then they're dumbed down on the CIO and CISO side because they don't want to make the board of directors, frankly, look stupid. And so what happens is you don't really have a robust conversation. And one of the things that I've done has been publishing a lot in Forbes and in other areas of what does cybersecurity and what cybersecurity should mean at a board. And I've, in one of these columns, actually traced out 10 questions that I think boards of directors should be having and asking of their CISOs and CIOs. And similarly, the CIOs and the CISOs need to sort of let their hair down and have a frank conversation, because we have no other choice. You know, lots of litigation now is coming to the fore in cybersecurity, and no one can afford to sort of skip through this conversation and say, well, we just checked off this box. And that brings me to another point in cybersecurity, which is oftentimes it seems to be the remit of audit committees. Well, auditors are not people who, with all due respect, and I used to work at PwC, auditors are not the kinds of people who have training and understanding cybersecurity. If anything, cybersecurity should be the function of a risk committee. And again, litigation, is coming down the pike here, and boards cannot afford not to pay attention to cybersecurity in a very systematic way. One of the issues that I've also been raising, as have others, is the notion that while under Sarbanes-Oxley, boards have to be required to bring on qualified financial experts, there is now pending legislation, which I support, of having boards be required to have qualified cybersecurity experts as members of the boards of directors. And I think that's an extraordinarily important measure, which I think will come to pass, because if the public corporations don't understand that themselves, well, then legislation will dictate to them. And I think that is the right way to do this. And I think, frankly, large companies in other geographies around the world are beginning to take cybersecurity, very seriously, and both at the board level and at the C-suite level. So with that, let's open it up for conversation. Thank you very much.